Podcast on Power Talk AM 1460 and FM 101.1. Streaming worldwide on iHeartRadio. Jan Price talks to the movers and shakers in the film business. The Jan Price Show.
You are listening to The Jan Price Show, and today my guest is Dave Karger, who is an award-winning entertainment journalist. Welcome, Dave.
Thank you so much. I'm so honored to be considered a mover and shaker in the entertainment business.
Well, you are. You are.
Thank you.
I'm excited to have you on the show. Thank you for being on the show. Let me just start with you. I want to know what inspired you to become an entertainment journalist.
Well, I was always fascinated by TV, movies, and really music when I was a kid. I started reading Billboard magazine when I was in the 5th grade. So here I was, 10 years old, this little kid studying Billboard magazine like a total nerd. And I studied classical piano throughout my entire childhood and played competitively and thought maybe I wanted to be a professional musician, but I don't think I was quite good enough. And plus I realized what a lonely life that could be as a musician traveling around with not that many people around. I always knew I wanted to do something in the entertainment business. I just wasn't sure what. And I went to Duke University and studied English there. And it was about halfway through my time at Duke where I began getting involved with the school newspaper, the Chronicle there. And I began as a film critic for their school newspaper there. And I really liked it. And around the same time, I was very fortunate enough to get a summer internship at Entertainment Weekly magazine, and that was in between my junior and senior year of college. I came back to New York, which is where I'm from, for the summer, and I worked at Entertainment Weekly. This was in 1994, so quite a long time ago. And that was my eureka moment where I realized that it was possible to work somehow in the entertainment world and really encounter brilliant, smart, passionate, fun people. So I was able to get hired there at Entertainment Weekly full-time 2 months after I graduated from Duke, and that's 1995. And I started there as an assistant answering phones and worked my way up. And I ended up staying there for 17 years before I ended up leaving the magazine to pursue other aspects of media.
So for the 17 years, you didn't do anything else but write for the magazine. What did you write specifically? Were you a film critic for them, or
so
did you write?
I was never. The only time I was actually ever a critic was in college. I found out and I discovered over the years that I was much more interested in being a feature writer and being an interviewer than I was being a critic. I like to bring the best out of people and really make them as interesting as they possibly can look. So when I started at the magazine, I was an assistant in the movies section. So I was doing administrative work. I was answering phones and keeping databases and things of that sort, but I was also pitching and reporting and writing short items that would run in the magazine. And then as the years went by and I would get promoted up to correspondent or staff writer or senior writer, I began writing longer feature-length articles. I ended up writing 50 cover stories at the magazine, on George Clooney and Elton John and Carrie Underwood, Kelly Clarkson, Halle Berry and Johnny Depp, Angelina Jolie. And then the other thing that I really did a lot of was I focused very intensely on the Oscar season. So really for 6 months out of the year, from September through March, my focus was the Oscar movies, the Toronto Film Festival, all of the other awards that lead up to the Oscars. So I was kind of known as the Oscar guy at the magazine, and that led to kind of a side career while I was at the magazine. That's when I started doing some television appearances, and I would go on CNN or smaller local New York channels and talk about movies and the Oscars. And it was through that I got an opportunity 17 years ago now, in 2000, to go on the Today Show once with Katie Couric and talk about movie box office. And after I did that one appearance, the Today Show actually came to me and asked me to be a regular guest on the show. So I've been doing that show now for 17 years.
Wow, exciting! That's very exciting to lead you down that road. What and you also, I understand, you are the red carpet greeter, the first person that when they step out of the limousine that they see you first. And Robert Osborne had that position before you. How did you get into? How did you get that? Because that's pretty amazing, right there.
I did that for 2 years, and I don't do that anymore because when I joined NBC a few years ago, the Oscar greeter is an ABC job, and they so that I ended up not being able to do that anymore. But I did do it for 2 years. Army Archerd was the first person to have that pose.
Right.
And he did it for decades. And then Robert Osborne did it. And when Robert was stepping aside from that as he was getting a little bit older, the Academy actually called me and said, I don't know if you're aware, but we have this position, the red carpet greeter. And I said, yes, of course I'm aware of what that is. I've seen Army Archerd do it. And for people who don't know, this is, to what you just said, this is the person who interviews all the nominees and presenters over the loudspeaker so that all the fans who are sitting in the bleachers at the actual Oscars get to hear these interviews. So I said, would I like to do that? Of course. So I was able to do that for 2 years, and it was a total pleasure and honor to get to see everybody from George Clooney to Sandra Bullock, and even the best song nominees and best foreign film nominees. And you really need to be well versed in all of the nominees, not just the A-list ones. But it was a true honor to be the third person ever to have that job.
Very exciting. Who took over after you, Dave? Do you know?
So right now, Chris Connolly does it, and he's part of ABC News, and someone I respect tremendously from his days back as a print journalist at Premiere Magazine, and he works for, I believe, 2020 and also ESPN, and a great guy.
Yes, he is. He is. Yeah, I have watched him. I didn't realize he was the greeter, though, official greeter, because they don't always tell you that.
Right, exactly.
Who that person is. So, you're on to the Today Show. How often are you on?
So I do that show about 10 or 12 times a year. So it comes out to an average about once a month, talking about everything from, I'm about to do on July 4th, Tuesday, July 4th, in the 8 o'clock hour, I'm going to do a second half of the summer movie preview. So all of the things, now that a lot of the big May and June movies are out, now we're going to talk about some of the big ones that people should look forward to in July and August. And then they have me on a lot during the award season. So I'm always sitting there with Matt Lauer and Savannah Guthrie as the Golden Globe nominations are being announced and as the Oscar nominations are announced. And that's something I've been doing now for, as I said, 17 years on that show. And it's just the most exciting morning. I'm like the kid the night before the first day of school. I can't sleep. I get all excited about it. I wake up at 4 in the morning before the alarm goes off just because I'm so jazzed that it's Oscar nomination day.
Oh, I know. I feel the same way. It is like Christmas, yes. Christmas morning for everyone. So how did it come about that you started working at Turner Classic Movies?
So I met some of the executives at TCM and at Turner, the parent company, about 10 or 12 years ago, and nothing was able to work out at that time. But in the years since, I began doing some work for other aspects of Turner, like TBS and TNT. I would host some red carpet shows with them for the Screen Actors Guild Awards. And sadly, when Robert Osborne was becoming more and more ill over the last year, he was not able to shoot his introductions to the movie. So I was approached again by TCM about a year ago, a little over a year ago now. And they explained to me that Robert wasn't able to work at that time, and would I be interested in filling in for him. So the first thing that I did was last summer, the month of July, I was their weekend host. And it was really exciting for me because it was Olivia de Havilland month. Right. And it was her 100th birthday was that month. So the very first night that I was on, July 1st, so it's here we are to the day, July 1st, a year ago was her 100th birthday, and she's alive and well, living in Paris, as you know.
Yes.
And so I hosted a whole month worth of programming that was a tribute to her, and then they brought me back this past February for the 31 Days of Oscar, which I know you're a fan of.
Yes.
And I hosted along with Ben Mankiewicz and Tiffany Vasquez that month of programming. So now I just finished a really great series that aired every Thursday in the month of June. And it was for Gay Pride Month. It was a gay Hollywood series. So every Thursday night in June, we paid tribute to a group of gay men and lesbians who were working in Hollywood from the 1930s all the way through the 1980s. So that was a real fun thing to do and quite an honor to be asked to do it.
How did that come about? Because that's very interesting and a different kind of programming for TCM. So how did that all come about?
Well, my understanding is that they did a similar series 10 years ago, Gay Hollywood, or a gay film series. The difference between the two series is that the one they did 10 years ago, the films had gay characters and gay content in them. The series that we just did it's not that the films necessarily had gay themes, but each movie featured a gay actor or a gay director or a gay writer. And so we were focusing on the contributions of gay men and lesbians in the early days of the Hollywood studio system, where it really wasn't a possibility to live an open and out, quote-unquote, life like we know now. So it's been fascinating. It was really fascinating for me to learn about all these people, ranging from, well-known names like Sal Mineo and Rock Hudson and Tennessee Williams, to lesser-known people like William Haynes, who was really the first openly gay movie star from the 1920s and 30s, and just a fascinating guy.
Share his story a little bit, because not everybody knows his story, and I thought that his story is fascinating. Can you share a little bit about his story?
Of course. William Haynes was this utterly charming and very handsome silent film star in the 1920s, and if you look at him, he kind of looks like Paul Rudd. He's got that same kind of puckish charm, and he made a handful of very successful movies in the 1920s. One that some people are familiar with is called Brown of Harvard, and he was one of the few people that was able to make that transition from the silent film to the talkies. And whereas a lot of people lost their careers because their voices didn't sound right, or it wasn't a good fit, he was great. But he always had this, kind of off-kilter, almost dangerous-seeming sensibility, because he was not the strapping, super masculine leading man. His homosexuality really did kind of seep through in a fun way. And what happened to him, which is kind of sad, is that after a few years, he was in the studio system working for Louis B. Mayer, and at a certain point, the studio head, Louis B. Mayer, wanted him to pretend that he was heterosexual and date women and talk in the press about how he wanted to get married. And at the time, he was in a very committed relationship, and he refused. He said, no, my relationship is more important to me. And at that point, he was fired from his studio job. And really, it was, the beginning of the end of his film career. He ended up having a great life. He became the most sought-after interior designer in Hollywood, and he, did everyone's house and became great friends with Joan Crawford, who was a client, and even did Louis B. Mayer's house.
Isn't that interesting?
Yeah. But for TCM, we showed a movie of his called Just a Gigolo, one of his talkie pictures, and it was just so much fun to learn about him. And the film historian, William Mann, who was on with me as the guest and the expert, he actually wrote a book called Wisecracker about William Haynes that was very acclaimed. I think it came out maybe 10 years ago or so. So it was great to have him there to give so much insight into William Haynes' life. A fascinating story.
It was a fascinating story, and I love the fact that he just stood up for what he believed was right for his personal life and for his relationship. And not many people are willing to do that sometimes, especially when it comes to their career.
You're right.
We're going to be right back after these brief messages. You are listening to The Jan Price Show, all about movies on Power Talk 1460 and 101 FM, and like The Jan Price Show on Facebook.
Have you ever dreamed of doing commercials or movies? Your dream starts with a desire. And if you have the desire to do commercials and feature films, we want to know about you. We're Moco Film, one of the Genesis companies that includes VoiceJock, a major provider of TV commercial talent to TV stations throughout the nation. Registering is free. Just go to mocofilm.com and fill out the information. That's MOCOfilm.com. You'll become part of a large talent bank available to producers. Go to mocofilm.com today and start living your dream.
Tired of looking at your worn wood floors? Mr. Sandless can bring them back to life again. That's right, it's Mr. Sandless, the no-sanding solution to beautiful wood floors. Mr. Sandless is clean, efficient, contains no harmful chemicals, and is certified green. Mr. Sandless refinishes all hardwoods, softwoods, engineered flooring, and laminates. Most jobs are completed in one day with no cleanup required ever, with virtually no odor, and is safe for pets and kids. No need to move out or even leave the house. Mr. Sandless is the company that invented Sandless Refinishing and is the largest floor refinishing company in the world. Over 120,000 happy customers, guaranteed adhesion, guaranteed satisfaction, and a 5-year warranty. Call Mr. Sandless today at 831-747-7476. That's 747-7476. Or MrSandless.com. That's MrSandless.com.
On Power Talk AM 1460 and FM 101.1, streaming worldwide on iHeartRadio. Jan Price talks to the movers and shakers in the film business. The Jan Price Show.
We are back, and my guest today is award-winning entertainment journalist Dave Karger. Dave, what other interesting stories from the TCM LGBT Pride Month?
Well, the one story that really affected me, and I was very moved by it, was about Montgomery Clift. And such a fascinating story, about him, a man who was just so handsome in movies like A Place in the Sun, and he was just really known for his looks, but also his acting ability. And he became, as I'm sure you know, great friends with Elizabeth Taylor. And then about halfway through his career, he was in a horrible car accident that really changed his appearance, because he had a scar on his face. And we showed his movie Suddenly Last Summer, which was him co-starring with Elizabeth Taylor and Katharine Hepburn. And at that time, it was after the car accident, and he was really going through a rough time, going through depression and also alcohol abuse. So in doing the research about the making of Suddenly Last Summer, which is such a fantastic film, I learned that it was a very rough shoot for him, and he would be late to work, and he couldn't remember all of his lines, and he was slurring his speech, and he didn't look great. He was sweating all the time as a result of the alcohol abuse. And both Katharine Hepburn and Elizabeth Taylor were his big, big champions because they just felt for this man, and they stood up for him to some of the filmmakers and producers who were giving him a hard time, and they really helped him through and allowed him to deliver the great performance in Suddenly Last Summer that he delivered. And it just made me realize what a kind of a gentle soul and devoted friend that Monty Clift must have been to have both of these women really fighting for him. So that was a story that we told on the TCM Spotlight as well, and showed that great film.
Yes, and yes, you're right. Elizabeth Taylor and he were very, very close, dear friends for a long time. I don't know as much about Katharine Hepburn and his relationship, but he always seems so tortured in all of his roles. He's, when you watch him, he's magnificent and in what he does, but he always plays these tortured characters. And I wonder if that had a lot to do with him having to hide the fact that he was gay.
Well, sure. I mean, I think there's a torment in his performances. That's something that's a through line to a lot of the things that he does, and that's something that he brought across, and that might have definitely had something to do with it. I'll tell you another great story about Katharine Hepburn. This is kind of the lore of that film. So the story goes that Katharine Hepburn was particularly unhappy with the way that the director, Joe Mankiewicz, was treating Monty Clift on the set. And on her last day of shooting, I guess there were a few more days to go, but it was her last day, she finished what was meant to be the last take, and she walked up to the director and she said, "Now am I done? Is that everything that I have to do?" And he said yes, and then she spat at him.
Oh.
And at his feet. And, because she didn't like the way that he was treating Monty Clift. So a very interesting story. That's one side of it, I'm sure, but that was something fascinating to read about as well.
Well, we all love Katharine Hepburn too, and
yes,
she did stand up and for what another person who did what she wanted to do and didn't follow everything that Hollywood dictated. Which I admire. She was a strong woman. What is your who does the research? Do you do your own research on these films? Who picks the movies and who does the research?
All credit for both goes to the amazing people at Turner Classic Movies. This group, and I've worked for so many different companies and shows and channels and publications over the years, and the people at TCM, they are aces. They have an amazing programmer. His name's Charlie Tabish, and he's the guy who comes up with all of the themes and picks all of the movies. So I take zero credit. I can take zero credit for that. And then they have a production team, of different levels. They have more senior producers, and they have some great younger interns who pore over all of these biographies and movie history books. And then every time I get hired, I get sent a packet of fascinating, it's like Christmas every time. And I get this amazing Google packet of information, and I just dive right in, and I vacuum it all up, and I love it. And that way, when I'm on the set with someone like William Mann, a great historian, or even if I'm just reading, an introductory piece off a teleprompter, all this stuff is really ingrained in my head, and it's been so much fun and so fascinating to learn about the behind the scenes. I don't know if people's lips were a little looser back then in the day, but I feel like there's so many great behind the scenes stories, like the one I just told of Katharine Hepburn and Joe Mankiewicz. I feel like we don't hear those stories as much about movies these days because there is such a public relations machine, and I'm sure you know that very well in setting up your radio show every time. But it is, I feel like we're much, even though there's so much entertainment news out there, in many ways we're more removed from, the great juicy stories of the film industry. They don't seem to come out as much about movies that are being made these days. So I love learning about the behind the scenes of these classic films.
I love it too, and that's the thing. Why I'm passionate about Turner Classic Movies. Everybody knows that. I talk about it a lot on my show, actually, and it just enriches your experience when you're watching the movie to get the background. I do notice lately that Ben Mankiewicz is getting more into more personal details about the stars, and which is always fun, little juicy details that he's been doing, and maybe you are too. But it is interesting and it enriches it. I'm disappointed when they don't have all their, because not all their movies have an introduction. Obviously.
I know. I'm so with you, Jan. I know, and that's why I'm always excited when a movie that I love is playing either at night or on a Saturday afternoon, because then I know I'm going to get an intro and an outro from it.
Exactly.
But I also love, and since you watch the channel so much, I also love what they've now done with the Essentials series on Saturday night, having Alec Baldwin do it, and he's bringing David Letterman and Tina Fey as his guests. So they really have great guest programmers. They just had Billy Bob Thornton. So they're really terrific about. Warren Beatty came in recently. They've got great people coming in, and what I've noticed just in the past year that I've been just beginning to work for TCM is how beloved this channel is, not only by the fans, because I was at the TCM Film Festival this year as well, but by the movie industry. I interviewed Tom Ford a year ago when he was beginning to do PR for his Nocturnal Animals movie. And
I loved. I love that movie.
Great. Oh, me too.
Yeah.
And I mentioned to him that I was, because I've known him for a while, that I was, starting to work on TCM, and he said, "Oh my God, I have that channel on as my background in my house. I have it on all day long." And there's a lot of people in the movie industry who are like that, and so many of today's filmmakers want to pay homage to classic films, so they've got that channel on. So I just am so excited to be working for a network that people love so much.
Oh, I agree. And what's interesting for me is I watch so much, I really do. So I usually try to block off Sunday, and Sunday might be my day just to lay in bed and just watch a bunch of movies that I've recorded. And this past week, it was all mostly Clark Gable, but all early 1930s black and white films. William Powell and Clark Gable mostly, because Clark Gable was the star of the month, and I just adore him. And then I go to see, current movies, because I do movie reviews, and I go to see current movies, and I'm just so disappointed, in the current movies.
I know.
They don't tell stories that well anymore. I mean, I just went to see My Cousin Rachel. I don't know. Have you seen that one?
I saw both versions, because I introduced the original version last summer with Olivia, and then I just saw the Rachel Weisz.
What did you think? How did it compare in your mind?
Well, I actually thought it was beautifully shot.
Yes.
The new version. So there is something to be said for, the technology and all the advances in cinematography.
And the color.
Because it really was spectacular.
Beautiful.
I have to say, I know the new version, I think, is getting mixed reviews. I appreciated it. I thought the performances were very strong. I think the Sam Claflin character came off as a little dim.
Yes.
Maybe more so than in the original, but it's hard to compete with Olivia de Havilland because she's so terrific. But I actually liked it enough.
Well, I did too, and I thought Rachel Weisz did a wonderful job, and she was, she's always magnificent in pretty much whatever she does. I did feel Sam Claflin was a little bit on the weak side compared to her performance, and it was a little unbalanced in that sense. But I thought it was good. But I appreciate the Olivia de Havilland, Richard Burton version.
Absolutely.
Even more. So we could sit and talk about movies for hours. I know this. I'm going to have you back on the show for sure.
Great.
So when you film your segments, are you filming them in Atlanta, or are you able to do them in New York or LA?
No, I go to Atlanta, and I very happily go to Atlanta. I'm someone who, even though I'm from New York, as I mentioned, I went to Duke University, which is in North Carolina. So I have a big affinity for the South. My in-laws live in Tennessee. So any excuse for me to get down to Atlanta, I'm super happy about. So I fly down to Atlanta each time, and we shoot for anywhere between 1 full day and 2 full days. And that's how we finish the whole month's worth of segments just in that short period of time, and it's a total pleasure.
And is that what Ben does too? Because he's on all the time.
That's right. So Ben shoots the vast majority of his stuff in Atlanta. My understanding is that occasionally if he has a guest, in the case of, let's say, Warren Beatty, who's unable to, if for time constraints to get to Atlanta, they do have a studio in L.A. that he films in. And then there's a New York studio as well where Alec Baldwin shoots all of his segments for The Essential.
That's why I was wondering whether they had studios in L.A. and New York. I knew Atlanta, but I used to live in Atlanta. So,
oh, really?
Yeah, I lived in Atlanta, and I worked for the '96 Olympics.
How exciting!
Yeah, it was exciting, a lot of fun. So I have a warm spot in my heart for Atlanta too. So you wear many hats. Which do you enjoy most?
That's a great question. I like the fact that I can wear so many hats. That's honestly the best thing. So, basically, I'm working right now with TCM, and then I'm also hosting for the website IMDb, and I go on for them all throughout the award season. And for the Emmys, I host a live backstage show right after the telecast where I interview all of the winners just after they've won, which is super fun.
Fun.
And then for the Oscars this year for IMDb, I was hosting a live companion show, and we were on the IMDb website, which is, I think, one of their top, if not their top, traffic day, because so many people are watching the Oscars and they go, Mahershala, who's that? And then they go on IMDb, and so it's a huge day for them. So they decided to capitalize on that by putting on this live show, and that way anyone who went on IMDb would automatically start watching this companion show that we were doing during the commercial breaks. And we had on great actors like Brian Darcy James from Spotlight and Melanie Linsky, who's a terrific New Zealand actress, and other guests, and we were kind of breaking down and dissecting everything that was happening during the award show. So as you can imagine, it was very interesting at the end of the show when that whole mix-up happened with Best Picture, and then 30 seconds later we were on live with Brian Darcy James trying to make sense out of it. It was fascinating, to say the least.
Oh, it was fascinating. I just think it was wonderful, actually. I think it got everybody really talking and interested in the Oscars. And, mistakes happen. It's live television,
It's true. And you know what? Part of me was appalled. But then I started thinking about it, and I realized, okay, how many people could have told us what won Best Picture the year before? And a lot of people would be hard-pressed to say Spotlight. But now everyone is going to remember that Moonlight won Best Picture. Did it have its, moment like you're supposed to really have your moment when you find out that you've won? No, they didn't. But people know it won.
Yeah, and I wonder if they'll do, I'm so happy that the same producers and Jimmy Kimmel's coming back, because I thought he did a marvelous job. And the fact that they announced it very early this year rather than, Kimmel didn't get the job until like December last year, and he only had 2 months to prepare. So now he's got a full, most of the year to prepare. But I hope they'll do some kind of funny bit about
they
that.
will.
Yeah,
they will. They all had a great sense of humor about it.
They did. Well, you're totally right. I think that was handled beautifully, though, by the producers of both movies, and certainly La La Land's producers did a wonderful job of making sure that Moonlight did get their moment in the sun. We're going to be right back. This is a great conversation. You are listening to the Jan Price Show, all about movies on Power Talk 1460 and 101 FM, and Like the Jan Price Show on Facebook.
Do you have difficulty falling or staying asleep? Do you suffer from snoring, sleep apnea, restless leg syndrome, or other sleep disorders? If so, we can help. Call Monterey Bay Sleep Center and arrange a sleep study in one of our luxury suites. We specialize in diagnosing and treating sleep disorders so you can regain your quality of life. Our luxury suites feature hotel-quality beds and flat-panel TVs so that you feel most comfortable during your stay. Call us today to arrange a sleep study at our secure facility in Monterey.
Call 831-920-1411. That's 831-920-1411.
The Ozio Theater in downtown Monterey is now open every day, showing independent and foreign films. The Ozio Theater has new concession offerings, including beer, wine, hard cider, and their homemade Lush Slush. You can now schedule private event screenings for community charity events, birthdays, anniversaries, or just a fun gathering of friends. For more information, visit the Ozio Theater online at oziotheater.com.
On Power Talk AM 1460 and FM 101.1, streaming worldwide on iHeartRadio. Jan Price talks to the movers and shakers in the film business. The Jan Price Show.
We are back, and my guest today is Dave Karger, who's an award-winning entertainment journalist. So let's go back to that question of many hats. You told us a little bit about IMBD. What other hats do you wear, and do you have a favorite?
So the other thing that I'm still doing quite a bit of, which we just touched on a little bit, is the Today Show kind of NBC family that I've been working with now for a number of years. So I go on Today Show about 10 or 12 times a year, and then I also work a lot with the show Access Hollywood as kind of a film expert and fill-in guest host for them. And I really enjoy that because I love, particularly Access Hollywood Live, which is their morning show. I really love live TV. And I love the unpredictability of it and having different guests to talk to and reacting to, the entertainment news of the day. That's a lot of fun as well. So if I had to pick a favorite right now, it probably would be TCM because I think it's just such a wonderful channel, and I really think they're up to great things, and I love keeping classic film alive for my generation, the younger generation. That's been a total honor and pleasure for me to do. But at the same time, I'd be very sad if I had to give up, either the Today Show or some of the digital stuff too, because I like keeping a foot in the digital world as well, because that really is where things are headed, isn't it?
Yes, it is. It is where things are headed. So with TCM, what's next for you? You just did this series. What do you have next on your plate with them?
I'm told that I'm going to be coming back for 31 Days of Oscar in February, which is very exciting. But I've also heard that they're trying to figure out something that I can do for them in the fall. So I'm waiting with bated breath to see what else I might be able to do, in the fall or winter between now and the Oscar time. And then, of course, I'm very much looking forward to being back at the TCM Film Festival, which is in April every year in LA. And if anyone of your listeners is a classic film fan, this is a must-attend event in Hollywood every April where they get incredible people. I got to interview Peter Bogdanovich in front of What's Up Doc, and it's just such a wonderful 4-day-long classic film festival where they get, Lee Grant and Michael Douglas and the Abraham Zucker guys from Airplane and Top Secret, all these different people to come in, and they show these great films on the big screen where they're meant to be seen. So for all of your listeners who love classic film, I would recommend going to TCM Film Festival. I
agree. It's again, I love the fact that TCM brings back movies every week, older movies. This week it was Some Like It Hot. Godfather. I just went back and saw Godfather back in the theater because it's just a much more rewarding experience. You can watch them at home and just fine, but I am still a big proponent of seeing movies in the movie theater, and it just has a whole different feel, because when you're at home you can stop it and you want to go get your popcorn or get your glass of wine or whatever, and then you start it up again. But when you're in the movie theater, you're just totally focused on watching that movie. So yeah. I love what they're doing there. What's your dream job? It sounds like you're living your dream, Dave.
I am pretty close to living my dream, which is great. The people that I really look up to, I would say, are people like Robert Osborne, Charlie Rose. I know you hear a lot of people say that, and who have my job. People love Charlie Rose. And James Lipton. I really like people who are able to get great stories and great interviews out of, celebrated, creative, and accomplished people. So the ultimate dream would be to have a show along the lines of a James Lipton or Charlie Rose show where I can continue the tradition of the long-form interview, much like you're doing. Because I think that, it's something that's disappearing a little bit these days in our kind of Snapchat age. So I think there's real value to a longer interview where someone can really settle in, where the subject can settle in and the audience can settle in for, an engaging and enlightening talk.
I agree, and that's why I do like what they're doing with the bringing back the essentials again, and what you're doing also, what you did with William Mann. The two of you talking and interviewing and having that discussion. I think that it totally enriches your experience when you're able to do that. And you're right, to dig deeper, and rather than surface everything. Though, who do you think? I mean, obviously TCM is starting. What I hear is that they are attracting a younger audience, hence having Tiffany Vasquez on the show because she's only in her 20s. Right. And you're certainly not that old either. Are they? When you went to the festival, what was the age group of the people that attended the festival?
That's what was so great about it, is that it ran the gamut. I mean, it was there were people in their 20s and there were people in their 60s and 70s there coming up and, wanting to say hello and chat. And that, to me, was so exciting. And the one thing that they all shared, despite the fact that they were of different ages and from all over the country, was this love of real entertainment and filmmaking and classic movies. And it was so exciting to be around that. And I think that's one of the things that's so great about TCM, is that their audience seems to be much wider range than a typical TV network. And that's been very heartening to me, because I think my fear was that, only older people will care about these movies. But that's not true. I think there is a younger crop that really does care. And TCM also has this new streaming service that they've put together with the Criterion Collection. It's called Filmstruck, and it's basically like a Netflix for classic film, because if you go on Netflix, there's like 3 classic films on there, and I love Netflix for TV shows, but for classic films, you don't really get much variety at all. But Filmstruck is now on, and they have a host named Alicia Malone, who is in her low to mid-30s, and she is just terrific, and she knows everything about these kind of more indie and foreign films. So she's the one who's hosting a lot of the programming on Filmstruck, and proving that these classic films are not just for an older audience.
It's great that they're branching out. And again, streaming tends to reach, again, probably a younger audience in general, I would say. Not to say that older people don't do streaming, because a lot of people have Netflix. But this particular Filmstruck is very genre generated. I mean, they do a lot of independent and foreign films. Is that right?
A lot of foreign films, a lot of documentaries. And when I hosted the Gay Hollywood film series in June, they also had a companion bunch of programming on Filmstruck. So more recent, more indie and foreign gay-themed films that were running on Filmstruck. But to go through Filmstruck, because I have a subscription, is just it's like a smorgasbord of so many great movies, and you just scroll through and you check them all off, all the ones that you want to see, because they have so many great things. And the fact that they've partnered with the Criterion Collection means that you have super high-quality movies on there.
That's great. We're going to be right back after these brief messages. You are listening to The Jan Price Show, all about movies on Power Talk 1460 and 101 FM, and like The Jan Price Show on Facebook.
Tired of looking at your worn wood floors? Mr. Sandless can bring them back to life again. That's right. It's Mr. Sandless, the no sanding solution to beautiful wood floors. Mr. Sandless is clean, efficient, contains no harmful chemicals, and is certified green. Mr. Sandless refinishes all hardwoods, softwoods, engineered flooring, and laminates. Most jobs are completed in one day with no cleanup required ever, with virtually no odor, and is safe for pets and kids. No need to move out or even leave the house. Mr. Sandless is the company that invented Sandless Refinishing and is the largest floor refinishing company in the world. Over 120,000 happy customers, guaranteed adhesion, guaranteed satisfaction, and a 5-year warranty. Call Mr. Sandless today at 831-747-7476. That's 747-7476. Or MrSandless.com. That's MrSandless.com.
Have you ever dreamed of doing commercials or movies? Your dream starts with a desire. And if you have a desire to do commercials and feature films, we want to know about you. We're Moco Film, one of the Genesis companies that includes VoiceJock, a major provider of TV commercial talent to TV stations throughout the nation. Registering is free. Just go to mocofilm.com and fill out the information. That's MOCOfilm.com. You'll become part of a large talent bank available to producers. Go to mocofilm.com today and start living your dream.
On Power Talk AM 1460 and FM 101.1. Streaming worldwide on iHeartRadio. Jan Price talks to the movers and shakers in the film business. The Jan Price Show.
We are back, and my guest today is Dave Karger, award-winning entertainment journalist. Dave, if you could, do you have any input with TCM at all as far as what films you think they might show?
Right now, I don't.
Okay.
I think I'm still too new.
Do they? Do you think Ben does?
That's a great question. I would imagine he has more say than I do, that's for sure, but I'm not sure.
Well, if you were to present an idea to them, like a star of the month, let's say, who would you choose and why?
Well, there's a couple things that I would love to do on that channel. As I already said to you, I'm a huge music person, so I love the idea of doing a series of films that have classic songs, either Oscar-winning or Oscar-nominated songs, or just well-known songs in them, and maybe doing a series where I really focus on the great song from the movie. So that's one idea.
I like that. That's a very
Yeah, I have to pitch that to them.
Yes, you do.
And then, I'm a character actor nerd. So, some of my favorite people to interview, these days on some of the more contemporary interviews that I do is someone like J.K. Simmons, Whiplash. So I would love to do, something where you focus on a lot of the great character actors of the past, whether it's Brenda DeBanzi or, people from, the 60s or 70s even, or even 80s. I think there's a lot of great people that you could focus on, some of the lesser-known stars. So that's something that I would love to do.
They did that recently. Do you know that? They did do some of the character actors.
Oh, well, there you go.
Yeah,
so my idea is horrible.
No.
My idea is great.
It's brilliant. It's brilliant, really, because there's many more,
Exactly.
But, they had Frank Morgan and, a lot of great character actors, Edward Everett Horton, and, they honored a few of those. And that was just fairly recently that they did that as one of their segments. But, there's a lot of character actors, so it would be good to bring that kind of a segment back. But I agree with you. It is fun, and they are more interesting, to characters. I mean, they make the movie. I mean, I love anything Frank Morgan's in. I just adore him, and Everett Horton too.
Yeah,
so
absolutely.
They're all wonderful. Tell me, how did you become the moderator for the Virtuoso Awards at the Santa Barbara Film Festival? And that's where we met.
That's where we met.
Yes.
So, as for people who don't know, the Virtuosos is this wonderful event that the Santa Barbara Film Festival puts on every February. And what it is, it's a night where we honor somewhere between 4 and 8 actors who have had a breakout performance. So over the years, we've had J.K. Simmons for Whiplash, Jared Leto for Dallas Buyers Club, Brie Larson for Short Term 12. This past year, we had Mahershala Ali and Naomi Harris for Moonlight, as well as Dev Patel for Lion. And the way that came about is that when I used to live in New York full-time, a friend of mine named Sean Smith, who was a colleague of mine at Entertainment Weekly, and he's still there, he used to moderate that event. Well, he did it, I think, for the first 3 years. I think the event's been going on for about 10 or 11 years, and he did it for the first 3 years. And he actually decided to take some time off and join the Peace Corps and move to Africa. So he called, and at that time, I was actually moving from New York to Los Angeles to work out of the LA office of Entertainment Weekly. So he called the Santa Barbara Film Festival and said, I can't do this event anymore, but I know the person who'd be perfect for it. So he recommended me, and they took his recommendation, and they had me do it. And now, even though Sean is back in the United States, actually he lives in New York now, so he couldn't do it anyway. But he was very happy to have me keep doing it, even though he had come back to the United States. So I've done that event now the last 7 years, and it is a true highlight for me to host that event because we have so many great people every year. I mean, this year, as I said, it was Mahershala Ali, Naomi Harris, Ruth Negga, Dev Patel, Aaron Taylor Johnson from Nocturnal Animals, Simon Helberg from Florence Foster Jenkins. It was such a great group of performers, and it was a total pleasure to do. So that's an event that I look forward to. And Roger Durling, who runs the Santa Barbara Film Festival, he and I start planning that event in September when we're at the Toronto Film Festival starting to see all of the award season movies. We're already, kind of scheming and planning and trying to imagine who the best lineup would be. So that is an event that I love to do so much.
And you do such a good job at it, Dave. You really do. And I'm not just saying that because you're on my show. It is one of my, it's one of my favorite. Well, first of all, I love the Santa Barbara Film Festival. It's one of my favorite festivals. And Roger Durling is just amazing on how he is able to choose, because he does have to choose these people that he's going to have tributes to long before the Oscars are even announced. And it's always amazing how he gets all of the Oscar-nominated actors and actresses.
It is great. I mean, we finalized our Virtuosos lineup last year in October, 4 months before this event,
Wow.
and
Wow.
look how many of them ended up getting Oscar nominations, and then Mahershala Ali won.
I
So
know.
it was very exciting for us to see all of these people, more so than in any other year, get the acclaim from not only the Golden Globes and the Screen Actors Guild and Broadcast Film Critics, but from the Academy. It was so exciting.
Well, I was so disappointed. I loved Aaron Taylor Johnson. First of all, I loved him when you interviewed him and his story, about how difficult it was for him to do that role, and and how he needed to leave. He wanted to leave to get back to his family, just to be close to his family, to his wonderful wife, who's a film director also. But that he won the Golden Globe for Best Supporting Actor and wasn't even nominated for an Oscar. I was like, what? How does that happen?
Well, it's interesting. I think a lot of people were expecting that Nocturnal Animals would get a nomination for Best Supporting Actor, but who was going to be that person? Was it going to be Michael Shannon, or was it going to be Aaron Taylor Johnson? And they seemed to be going back and forth. Yeah, and then when Aaron won the Golden Globe and then got a BAFTA, British Academy Award nomination,
Yes.
I thought, oh, he's going to get it. And then he wasn't even nominated. I think, there's something about the Michael Shannon character that I don't want to give away for people who haven't seen the movie, but I think there was something about, he was ill in the movie, and I think that helped. A lot of times it's not just the performance, it's characteristics of the character too. And I think there were things about that Michael Shannon role, not to take anything away from his performance, which was great, but that was a little bit more Academy friendly, I think.
Well, because his Aaron Taylor Johnson played such a despicable character, but that is just so difficult to do. I mean, I like Michael Shannon also, but I felt that was sort of similar to some of the other things he's done, to be honest.
I agree.
That characterization, where this was so the antithesis of what Aaron Taylor Johnson's about. So, but it's always fascinating because it is you're in Hollywood, it's who has you tell me about how people get nominated for lots of different reasons, and then even the best performances. There's so much political stuff that goes on behind the scenes, and I'm sure
absolutely there is. And it's George Clooney has said to me, it's literally like a political campaign. He said, I have literally kissed babies of Academy members when he's been out on that trail, and he sometimes just makes him feel really dirty because we'd like to think that it's just about the performance, and there are cases where it is just about the performance. If you remember when Monique won Best Supporting Actress for Precious, she didn't do any campaigning and she still won. So I think there are examples of winning on the merits of the performance, but then there are also cases like when Marion Cotillard won for Best Actress for La Vie en Rose, and it was really close between her and Julie Christie for Away From Her. A lot of people say, and Marion Cotillard gave a great performance, but a lot of people say that because Marion Cotillard learned English and came to the United States and spent the whole award season really getting to know a lot of the voters, that helped her case in a very tight race between two deserving women.
it's always interesting. This year, I usually, the year before, I always, do my Oscar ballot. And, the year before, I only got 3 wrong out of 25 categories. Wow. And this year, it was all over. It was a disaster because
I have never gotten my predictions so wrong as I did this year.
Me too. It was the worst.
Shameful.
Yeah, it was. I was like, I got 9 wrong, and I was like, oh my God, that's the worst I've ever done.
Right. Well, it was tough to predict this year, but that's good. You don't want it to be predictable, and I actually like the fact that the Academy gave La La Land the most nominations ever, or tied the record, but then didn't give it Best Picture. That's interesting to me. I think it was more exciting for them to give La La Land 6 awards, but still give the main prize to Moonlight. I think that felt like a more interesting way to go for them, and more power to them.
I agree. And, it made a very interesting Oscar ceremony. We're going to be right back after these brief messages. You are listening to The Jan Price Show, all about movies on Power Talk 1460 and 101 FM, and like The Jan Price Show on Facebook.
Do you have difficulty falling or staying asleep? Do you suffer from snoring, sleep apnea, restless leg syndrome, or other sleep disorders? If so, we can help. Call Monterey-based Sleep Center and arrange a sleep study in one of our luxury suites. We specialize in diagnosing and treating sleep disorders so you can regain your quality of life. Our luxury suites feature hotel-quality beds and flat-panel TVs so that you feel most comfortable during your stay. Call us today to arrange a sleep study at our secure facility in Monterey.
Call 831-920-1411. That's 831-920-1411.
The Yozio Theater in downtown Monterey is now open every day, showing independent and foreign films. The Yozio Theater has new concession offerings, including beer, wine, hard cider, and their homemade Lush Slush. You can now schedule private event screenings for community charity events, birthdays, anniversaries, or just a fun gathering of friends. For more information, visit the Yozio Theater online at oziotheater.com.
On Power Talk AM 1460 and FM 101.1. Streaming worldwide on iHeartRadio. Jan Price talks to the movers and shakers in the film business. The Jan Price Show.
We are back, and my guest today is Dave Karger, who is an award-winning entertainment journalist. We only have a few more minutes, Dave, but let me ask you, do you have an all-time favorite movie?
Well, from classic films, since we've been talking about TCM so much, it's All About Eve, which is just simply brilliant
yes.
and such a great behind-the-scenes Hollywood tale, and I just love everything about it. It might be the smartest script, along with maybe broadcast news that I've ever seen put to film. And then from this millennium,
yes.
I would say my favorite film is Sofia Coppola's Lost in Translation. I'm just such a fan of that, of the tone and the mood of that film and the droll humor and that performance by Bill Murray. It just kills me that he did not win the Academy Award for that.
I know. It was.
That.
Have you seen Beguiled, Sofia Coppola's new movie?
No, I have not.
Yeah.
And I'm always curious to see what Sofia Coppola is up to, and I have not had a chance to see that one yet. So when it opens in theaters, I'm going to be first in line.
Did you see her mother's movie, Paris Can Wait?
I did see Paris Can Wait. I wanted and expected to love it, and I liked the scenery, and I liked some of the food, and I liked Diane Lane's performance, but I had a hard time with the central relationship of that movie. I didn't buy it. And I thought she should have stayed with Alec Baldwin.
Okay. Well, I was, you kind of get, I read all the entertainment news and I try to save reviews, but that one kind of came out and they said, nah, it's not really.
I wanted to like it more than I did.
Right. It looks like one of those that, yes. How about Alec Baldwin? He's not in there very much, is he?
No, he should have been in it more. Do you know what's a great movie that's out now that your listeners should find if they can? Is The Hero. Have you heard about this movie with Sam Elliott?
Yes. That was one I wanted to see at Sundance and didn't get you, but it is coming out. Yes. Tell them a little bit about that.
That's the best movie I've seen this year, and Sam Elliott plays this aging actor who had a big hit movie in the 1970s, and now it's decades later, and the career is not going as well as it used to, and some Western society wants to honor him with a Lifetime Achievement Award, and he's conflicted about that. He also has a strained relationship with his daughter. It's a beautiful film and a really great lead performance by Sam Elliott. This is kind of like he's having a moment now, which is really great.
Well, I adore him. I've always loved him, and he's one of my favorites. So I'm very much looking forward to that movie. How about Wonder Woman? I mean, I usually don't like to do blockbuster movies, but I did like Wonder Woman a lot.
So did I, and there was a lot of talk about the fact that it was the top-grossing opening weekend for a movie made by a female director, and some people say, well, why does that matter? And I think it does matter.
It does.
Because, A, women filmmakers are so woefully underrepresented in the major studio system to begin with, and secondly, because this movie was directed by Patty Jenkins, who did Monster, where Charlize Theron won her Oscar, by the way, as I'm sure you know. Because it was directed by her, it had a sensitivity and a humanity that you don't always see in a superhero movie. So I think it matters that she directed it, and I'm glad she did, and I'm so glad it did so well.
Oh, I am so happy it's doing so well, too. And now we'll hopefully see more female directors, especially, I guess we're all kind of tired of the tentpole movies, but this was one that was different. And I've told a lot of people to go see it. People who never thought about going to see that kind of a movie. I said, go see it, because the bottom line, it's about love.
I agree. And it's got great performances, and it looks good, and it's exciting, but it also feels like you're watching human beings, which is nice.
Yes. So what are you doing? You're doing another interview after this one. What else are you doing while you're in New York? Are you doing Today's Show or?
So I'm doing Today's Show on the 4th of July, which I'm excited about. And then I just finished guest hosting a really fun show called New York Live, which is a live morning talk show that's on after the Today Show. So I've had a really fun week this week interviewing everyone from Tony Danza to Fran Drescher to Jermaine Jackson and Lily Taylor. It was a great group. And then I got to hold a puppy today on the show. So all of these great things have happened. It's been a really fun time.
It's been great. Well, it's been great having you on the show, Dave. I can't wait to have you back on. It's always fun talking with someone who knows so much about movies as you do. So I just really appreciate you being on the show, and enjoy the rest of your day.
My pleasure. Thanks, Jan.
Thank you. You have been listening to The Jan Price Show, all about movies on Power Talk 1460 and 101 FM, and like The Jan Pro Show on Facebook.